Welcome to part one of our forensic divorce series. So today we're breaking down the number one question women ask us. Where'd the money go? If you're getting partial statements, screenshots, pressure to just settle, or the numbers don't match your lifestyle, you're not imagining it. Today we'll show you the patterns that we look for inside a forensic review. So I'm Emily Flowers, and I'm here with, of course, Melissa Gregg to guide you through. You don't have to be a CPA or a forensic accountant to see the signs. Once you kind of understand how the money actually gets hidden, right, you have leverage. So Melissa, how does it get hidden? Tell us kind of the breakdown and where hiding money happens.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of what we're going to talk to about today is going to be, cash withdrawals, foreign transfers, or even transfers to accounts that could be hidden, undisclosed accounts, and just these typical kind of areas to be looking at. Now, the point of this series is to really put you into the driver's seat and say, there's a lot of things that you can do. There are some things that you should leave up to the professional, but at the end of the day, working closely with a forensic expert is going to save you time, effort, and money. I would say not all forensic experts are the same. And so most of them want to do their own work and they don't necessarily want to rely upon what you're doing. But you can find some people that would. So when we're looking at where did the money go, I'm typically looking for patterns, or you're looking for changes in the pattern. So we're not just looking at one missing account, and again, you don't know what account is missing. So you're looking for changes in lifestyle. What is being reported on your tax return may be very low, but you know that you're living in an expensive house, or you're buying things with cash. That's going to be typically the biggest red flag. Like most businesses are not run on cash basis, like all things are transferred. So that means that somebody pays you and it's transferred through your bank account, through Venmo, through Cash App. But at some point, it's going to hit that bank account, and it could actually hit it and then leave. So we're also looking for foreign bank accounts. We're looking for numbers of accounts that you don't recognize. Right? In the divorce arena, you're going to have to tell everybody all the accounts that you have. Well, if there's accounts that haven't been listed and you see numbers that don't exist in the financial disclosures, that's going to be a red flag. We're also looking at when people are just giving you screenshots, right? Even screenshots of your W-2s or the bank statements or the tax returns, instead of the full statements, or they're downloading it from their bank account, right? And so you're looking at all the transactions, but you're not looking at like the total deposits, the total withdrawals, the check numbers, the check amounts. This is where you want the full statement. And quite frankly, the whole point is to build at first a complete financial picture. So that's where we go back to that you've already downloaded your position statement. You've already led into your property statement. So your property statement is going to list all of these accounts and these bank accounts, these credit card accounts, these assets, all the institutions. And at the end of the day, we're trying to get to a total number of everything that you have so that we can look at the best case scenario, which is like a 50-50 split, right? Regardless of what they're saying, if they're saying this is separate, you don't own this, this is missing, we used to have this amount. That's why we want to see where there's some gaps in the information that they're providing to you. So these are kind of the big picture things that we're first initially looking for, but then we have to go a little bit deeper into how do we quantify it? How do we put together some lists? Because at the end of the day, if you go through these, like when you receive all of these statements, you need to be going through them. You need to be saying, hey, we never went to this restaurant. Or, oh, look at this. When he traveled out of town, this doesn't make sense, right? These expenses are too large. these accounts are not noticed. Like, I didn't know we had a Wells Fargo account or a Bank of America account. Like, this is something that the forensic expert, when they come in, are not necessarily going to know. So if you put eyes on those statements first, then we can show you how to summarize them, how to put them together in a format that's going to be most utilized in negotiation or mediation, which is really your first goal. If you need to go to trial, you're going to need an expert to come in and do some additional work, but you can work in tandem with the expert for strategy, for negotiation strategy, for settlement strategy. And if your team isn't talking about this, they might not be the right team to do this work for you or with you. And these are questions that you can ask up front, as opposed to going down and already paying somebody $5,000, $10,000. And then they say, oh, I don't want you to look at anything. I don't need your help in anything. I always am working with people closely so that they're doing some work, I'm doing some work, we're combining forces. Do you have login information? Can you get login information? Most bank accounts allow you to download the state, like the transactions in a CSV file, which is like an Excel format. If you can get that, that is golden. That could save you hours and hours and hours of paying a forensic to automatically input data. Yes, there's AI. Yes, there's tools out there to help us. Are they good? No. Can I take a PDF and QR, like look at it and convert it into an Excel file? Yes. Do I spend a lot of time reformatting that data? Yes. Is it still easier for us to literally input the data manually? Yes. So, like, all of these things may be misnomers about the forensic process, but that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to give you some tools that you can actually do and use to move your case forward if you cannot afford to hire a full-time forensic and pay $10, $15, $20,000. Like, all of this is what we should cover today.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the minute people kind of even think that there's, you know, separate assets or hidden money or whatever, it's like they automatically are like, oh, well, there, it's got to be billions of dollars and we're going to pay somebody to find it. And when, sometimes it's not. And in the lending space, we don't do screenshots of anything. Like, we won't accept it because it can come from anywhere, anyone. It never has their information on it. We actually don't allow the Excel spreadsheets from the bank account, but I can see what you're saying and how helpful that would be. We have to have statements, and people will try to like black out their information. I'm like, this is the government. The government will see everything that we are doing. So they already know. But we have to have very, very, very precise information, and it's full statements. If you forget the last page where it was an intentionally left blank, we're going to ask you for it because we want to know what you're hiding. And so if you want to know what people are hiding, make sure that you have all the pages, not 6 out of 7, not 4 out of 8, all the pages.
Yeah, and downloading the information online, typically it only goes back 18 months. And where we want that for is because we can sort that data and we can see, like, even if you're just looking at your income and expenses, we can sort how many times you paid your electric bill. Like, if you are paying your electric bill twice a month, then that's probably one is the business, one is the personal. Like, we're looking for these patterns. And at the end of the day, that's the hardest information to get. So you typically only have access to that if you're like on a joint account. And so you can go in, and most people don't even know that this is available. You can log into your account. You can go to download the actual transactions. And this is going to be key if there is forensic issues, because at the end of the day, if we're going to compare a business, like a business tax return to the actual underlying documents. So they're going to put personal expenses into the tax return, right? So we go back to the bank statement and we say, okay, well, let's look at for 1 year, What did they spend on rent? Does that add up to what they reported on the tax return? What did they spend on auto expenses? What did they spend on meals and entertainment? Well, obviously, meals and entertainment are typically going to be tons of personal expenses, right? We already know that. But if you don't have all of the transactions for an entire year period, you can't compare it directly to the business tax return. So that's where it becomes really important. And most business owners who have small businesses run everything through their business account, or they just have one account that they're doing personal and business. They're handing that over to their tax accountant. The tax accountant's just adding things up. But when we come in, if you can log in and get the 18 months downloaded, we can sort it, we can use it. We're not entering it in. Like sometimes you're looking literally at a cost benefit analysis. How much am I going to pay an expert to come in and do this work? Then, and are they going to find anything? So if you're going to spend $15,000 on somebody entering every single piece of data and comparing it to the business to see if the tax returns are incorrect, what if they don't find $15,000 worth of stuff, right? So now, yeah, and can you use it in any sort of capacity? So and all of this forensic stuff, you should look at it as stages. Like the first stage is I can download that CSV file really quickly. Now we can sort it. We can look at not only filling out your financial disclosure, which is your income and expense statement, right? Mm-hmm. But we can then say, does the business tax return make sense? Does the income make, like the first thing that you can do that's really easy is add up all the deposits to the business account. So let's say you can't download all the transactions, but you have the statements. Each statement has summary of all of the income. Now that is typically the reported income because it's got to come in from somewhere, right? So you add up all those deposits over the 12 months. It's 12 numbers that you pull, you add them together. What is that total? Is the same total represented on their Schedule C, which would be reported on your personal tax return for the business? Or is it the same number that's reported on their business tax return? If those numbers are not the same, then you want to take it one step further and say, okay, was there loans that came in? Because if you go and get a credit card loan or a personal loan, that's going to look like a deposit. Okay. So did anything deposit in as a loan? And what we're really looking at is there were way more deposits in the bank account than what shows up on the tax return. So now we have to understand, are they underreporting income on their tax return? Do they have a Stripe account? Do they have a Venmo account? Do they have a Cash App account? Where is the money? Are they having it deposited into crypto? If somebody is receiving money in crypto, it's not necessarily going to hit your bank account, right? So there's a lot of places that you can just start to understand, is the cash flow coming in? That's where it's important. Do you have a cash-based business? Are they receiving cash that is never hitting the bank, and then you go and buy a car for $20,000 of cash, right? That's how you would not ever hit a bank account. But those are some of the patterns that we're looking at initially that you can summarize. Now, the expenses we always know are typically fluffed, right? So you underreport your income, you overreport your expenses, and now you have a little tiny amount that's the taxable income, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that that's the cash flow. That means that's what you're reporting on your tax return. These things are not the same. We really want to know what is the cash flow, because again, you could have properties that you're taking negative, if you have an operating entity and then you have a property that's not making money, right? So you're making a lot of money over here, you're negative over here, and then they come together and you still have a little tiny bit of taxable income. Taxable income means nothing, like nothing in the wide scheme of things of the cash flow that's coming into the marriage. And that's really what we want to get a handle on. And we don't need to get a full picture. If you're going in to negotiate for mediation, you don't need to know every single transaction. You need to know big cash movements, big cash withdrawals, round numbers. Nobody transfers things. If I'm going to pay Emily, I'm not going to pay her $315.65, right? I'm going to send her $500. I'm going to send her $1,000. When I go to the ATM, I'm not pulling out, $320.53. I'm pulling out round numbers. So you have to put some eyes on these bank statements, because you're going to see patterns that don't make sense faster than a forensic is going to see them, not knowing your daily habits. Everybody is habitual. We do the same things over and over. You eat at the same restaurants. You go to the grocery store on the same day. You will see breaks in the patterns. So that's one of the first things to look for.
Which is, it's so interesting because of, you're talking cash flow, where in my area of expertise, right? We don't look at cash flow at all. If your tax returns say you make 500,000 and you write off 400,000, you only make $100,000. So typically, one little tip from my arena is go and look at any like recent mortgage activity. So if you've done a recent refinance or you've purchased a recent home, go look at the original documentation from that, because the person who got the loan has to show a really nice face forward, and that'll show up in the documentation. And we've kind of talked about that before. Plus, cash, the lending sphere is so fearful of cash. They think you're like a drug dealer, a terrorist, or a prostitute. Like they don't even know what to do with it in the lending space. So if you run a cash business, you can't get a loan until you come up with something that is not cash based for 2 years. So pay attention, I guess, is the best thing that I can say, to the different ways that Melissa and I work, and the different areas that you can grab information for yourself, because we do things differently, but it all comes together in the end. We can, the things that I do and the things that Melissa does work together to create your, is there hidden money? Is there underreported income? Is there this? Is there that? Is there cash flow? Is, all of those things. And so, it's been a very interesting thing between the two of us, learning about those different ways to find information.
Well, and the reality is most people are not trading in cash. Okay. And so there might be a little bit of cash that's coming through their business, but it's not a tremendous amount. And so there is always a trail. And I try to tell people, like, when we've done forensics and we did big fraud investigations, like in government entities, kickbacks, and like huge things. Most people are concerned about the IRS, right? Well, that's a double-edged sword in a divorce, because like these are being reported potentially on your own tax returns. What you're really looking for is leverage to get them to start to negotiate, to get them to start to realize that it could be an IRS problem. It could be a cash problem, that they're not reporting things. But at the end of the day, the cash is not of concern to me. And your spouse is not a criminal. They are hiding money from you. They're not hiding money from some other outside entity. The IRS is not coming knocking at their door because they're overwhelmed anyway. But what they're hiding is from you, which means it's hiding in plain sight. It is all going to be represented in the movements in and out of those bank accounts. And so getting the statements, and again, this is why they don't want to give you the statements. Everybody can go and download these PDFs very easily online, or you can go to the bank. And if you have a joint account, go to the bank. They never see people. You probably never made them do any work for you and your account. Walk in there, especially if you have business accounts there. Walk in. I did this yesterday, right? You walk in, you say, can you print me out the past, how many ever months are accessible? And then bring a jump drive and say, could you also put these electronically on this jump drive? So now you have them electronically that you can transfer easily to your lawyer or your expert. And then you have them printed out that you can start looking at, right? You preserve that original format, but you start highlighting, you start writing notes on this. Like, what do you see as breaks in the pattern? Because everything, again, they're not hiding it outside. Everything, if it's not cash, has to hit the bank account in some capacity. Whether it comes in and then immediately comes out, which is what a lot of people do, is they'll transfer it from account to account to account. That's when you need to like look at the accounts kind of all in one time period. We usually start with just one 12-month time period, and it's a January through December, because then that will mimic. And right now, like we're in 2025, you don't have all the accounts, right? You don't have all the statements. So go back 1 year, right? Go to 2024, go to 2023, go back to before this all started happening. Before they started planning and prepping for the divorce is where you're going to see a baseline. And so you want to understand before things started to go awry, what did happen? Was the paycheck being deposited in one account or two accounts? That's going to be W-2 wage payroll statements that you're going to want to get. But if you're just looking at the bank statements, you want to start looking for how could somebody move money? Because everybody's like, well, they've transferred it to some foreign account. They've moved it to some place that I don't know about. The only way to really get into a tax sheltered country is to move cash. And so what does somebody do? They do daily and weekly ATM withdrawals. Sometimes these are things that you're not even going to notice on a regular basis. Like we have one client that was taking out $500 a day. $500 a day, $500 a day, right? So over that 30-day period, you now have a substantial amount of cash. But in order for you to not have a trail, you have to take that cash on your person and then go to the foreign country and deposit that cash into a foreign bank account, which means you go through customs and all sorts of things. So yes, maybe we have some pilots that have been able to transfer money through the system or internationally because they're taking it on their person. They're able to get through the system a lot easier, right? And again, how much money can you, like, this is not the movies, right? You're not putting all of this and then traveling internationally. It's going to be smaller amounts that you're looking for. Again, the bank should, if you have like a large withdrawal, like $5,000 to $10,000 in a month, the bank should flag that. I've worked in banks. I can tell you right now, and I've seen people deplete money very quickly over time. We actually had a case where he depleted all the bank accounts, millions of dollars over a 12-month period. Do you think any of the banks flags those transactions? No. So don't rely on this sort of hypothetical, the court's going to find it, or the bank should have recognized it, or the CPA should have noticed. These people are very sly in provide, like we have one guy that like does his own spreadsheet. The CPA has never seen an actual underlying document because this guy has just given his own spreadsheet that I'm sure he manipulates, right? And has shown that he makes no money, yet he has contracts that come in $5 million a year to that company, and he's not reporting barely any of the income. So don't rely on anybody to figure this out. If they're smart, they're going to do it in different kinds of areas, and it's a separation of duties. No person in their life has seen all of the different places and put it all together into one kind of concise place. So just start with the cash withdrawals, because at the end of the day, a list of cash withdrawals, you put the date, you put the account, you put the amount, you add it up over the course of the year. Then you say, hey, we're going to assume that you've done this every year for the past 5 years. Like I'm essentially making an assumption about these numbers. But if you put together those cash withdrawals, guess what you're going to say to the other side? Hey, tell me where this money went. I'm not going to go and trace it, right? You had the money came in, you took it out, you probably took out the cash because, again, I can see it coming in because it's got to hit first because it got transferred from a client client pays you. The client wants to deduct that on their tax return, so they're going to give you a 1099. But what happens is the person's going to take it out in cash. If they want to spend it on a mistress, if they want to spend it on some outside gambling, addiction, any of those things, they're going to pull it out as cash. You don't need to know where it went. You need to put it together in a list and say to the other side, say to your spouse and their attorney, hey, guess what? There's $20,000 of cash missing. Where did it go? Can you provide receipts that show me where you spent that marital money, or that now marital money has become marital waste? Okay. And I want 50% of it back, because you can go waste your money, but you can't waste my side of the money. So that's a very simple way to prove out a marital waste claim with just cash withdrawals, a list of them. Do you need an expert to do that? Or can you simply put, sometimes you can just write that out on a nice piece of paper if you have some nice handwriting and
Sure.
put it over, or you bring it to mediation and you say, look, from our joint account, from this business account, from this subpoenaed records, I was able to identify 10, 20, $50,000 of money, cash movement. Here's a summary. Here's the dates. Could you go to the other side and ask them what happened to that marital money? They're not going to be able to answer that. Now, a really better way is to do it in deposition, so that they're almost surprised by it. And then you would bring the statements and the attorney would be like, look, here's a $10,000 withdrawal. What did you do for this? Well, I don't know. Okay. What did you do for this? Well, I don't know. Well, you ask yourself this question. When's the last time that you have taken out $5,000 or $10,000 in cash and not known where you spent it? They're not going to have an answer to it. You can then say, great, give me credit for that amount. Give me 25,000. You took 50, you wasted your 25. You're not going to waste my 25. I want 25,000 of other assets to be given to me first, and then we split everything else. That's how marital waste works in a settlement offer.
Wow. You probably just saved somebody like $30,000. Like, y'all should go back and listen to this whole thing again and take notes if you didn't do it the first time, because there were some gems in there. Melissa just told you exactly how to do half of it on your own. And the other thing is I agree. Do it in stages. Don't just hire somebody for $30,000 and blow it all out. Do it in stages and find out who's going to work with you. Not get out of my way. Let me spend your funds. Be involved. Take control of your process. You know the patterns better than anyone. Oh, well, they get in routines, right? They get up every morning at, 5 a.m. and they have a cup of coffee and they read the newspaper and then they go to the gym. And then you don't know this after being married for however long? I know I do.
Yeah.
So
at the beginning, they're going to be using the debit card and spending it at restaurants and things like that. When they get more sophisticated, they're going to do it in cash and they're going to do it in transfers. And so those are the two easiest places to look. Just how we explained how to do the cash one, you would also look at the transfers, and the transfers are again going to be summarized. They're either and there's always going to be a tracking, except for if you're like in a credit union. I don't know what credit unions are doing, but like they're just a little bit like too simple. But for the most part, a bigger bank is going to have a transfer is going to be in 3 different places. Okay. A transfer is either going to go internal, which means they have another account at that bank institution, and you're just going to see the last 4 digits of the account number. So that internal transfer would be to savings. And then now you're going to have to get the savings account number, statements as well to see if it goes out. So that internal transfer is going to be one. Do you have record of that account ending number? Because they could have an account with their family member. They could have an account with their infidelity partner. They could have a business account there. Most people have their hidden accounts in the same bank as their real accounts. It's crazy, but they're not criminals. They're hiding it from you and hoping you don't find it. The second place that you're going to have a transfer is to an outside account. So an outside account is going to, if you're in Bank of America, it's going to say transfer to Wells Fargo and then have an account number. So again, you just need that Wells Fargo name that you can go subpoena those records, and you would subpoena them under the business EIN number or tax identification number or the person's social security number. So that's what you need for the subpoena. Now you're going to go and get whatever Wells Fargo, because they haven't disclosed those accounts. The third is going to be a transfer that's going to hit like a cashier's check, right? So it's going to be a withdrawal, like a counter withdrawal, which means that they're going to take that. It's almost like a cash withdrawal, but it means that they then got it into a cashier's check, which means you're going to lose the trail a little bit, right? Or they're going to write an actual check, and you're going to see the check is going to be written to them. They're going to go deposit it. And then you need the back of the check to see where the routing number was for where they deposited that check. So those are going to be all the places that are going to give you clues. You just need to, you have your list of your cash withdrawals. Now you also have a list of accounts that they have not listed on their financial disclosures. So you're going to take that into deposition or into mediation. And guess what that shows? They have lied. They are being, evasive. They are going to, it's going to make them look like they are trying to keep things away from you, which they are, but you don't need to know necessarily where it went. You need to just show that there is some fraudulent behavior, right? And that it wrecks their credibility. So then the mediator is going to be like, you guys should probably settle this. And you're going to make some assumptions. Well, if you've transferred this amount of money each month for 5 years, then you should owe me 200,000. And they're going to be like, whoa, I didn't do 200,000. I maybe did like 150,000. They're going to tell on themselves by correcting you because you estimated too high. There is one person that knows exactly where the money is and how much they've transferred, and it is your spouse. So once you get close to that number in guesstimating and estimating, they're going to then tell on themselves and say, whoa, no. I transferred $50,000 for a tax payment. I did this. Why can't you just do it? Like the IRS allows you to pay it online, and then it could clearly have said IRS tax payment on there, right? You don't need to be so evasive. So if they're being evasive, then you would want proof of that payment was made to the taxing authority. So again, all stages, you're requesting them to provide evidence because you've seen it come in and it's missing. You don't necessarily need to complete the whole trail to find out where it went. You get them on the hook to try to explain where it went, and that will also save you some time.
Wow. Okay, girl. We're gonna have to pick this up.
All right.
Another part, I think. So I don't even know if I told you how many parts there were, because I don't even know if we know how many parts there are to this, but I can guarantee you that there will be a part 2, if not more. So, if you think about it, like before all the subpoenas, before the attorneys, you start with a soft ask. We need statements so that we can put our offer together. This tests cooperation and reveals mindset to you. If they are not willing to cooperate, if they're evasive, if they're, blowing up over little things that you're inquiring about, things like that, you'll know what you're supposed to do. Again, I'm going to reiterate stages. Do it in little parts, spending little money so that you can do more. In part 2, we're going to break down more of the retirement accounts, 529s, 1031 exchanges, crypto, separate property, and how it becomes marital. We're going to have a couple of downloads in the divorce vault as well. But I'm sure we're going to be covering more and more. So we'd love to hear your feedback as well. And if you have questions that we can also tackle in this series. So bring it. We want to see it. And Melissa, do you have any parting words and thoughts that we need to add to this before we head to part 2?
I think at the end of the day, you just have to realize that this is not as complex as everybody makes it seem. And there are pieces that you can do. You're going to recognize things on the bank statements that nobody else is going to recognize. You're going to pay people, potentially your lawyer, or because the lawyers want to get involved with this, right? They want to take a look at the bank statements, but they're not looking like a forensic would look at it. And so if you put on the forensic hat and you just start to summarize some of these things in very simple, basic terms, you can then sort of use it as leverage in the negotiation, use it as leverage in mediation. And your attorney or your expert might be like, well, don't disclose that we're on the trail. I think you have to expose it, because that then gets them like, that's going to save you time and money. Everybody else is going to be like, no, let's save all this information for trial. If you go to trial, you're going to spend $50,000 to $100,000 on all of these pieces. And at the end of the day, a judge might look at it and be like, I'll give you credit for some of it. Like, I'm sure they were also using it for business, perfectly good reasons. So I think you're kind of having to lead some of this strategy. And our role and our goal for all of these recordings and downloads is to help you do enough so that you can get settled, to do enough that you maybe have strategy sessions with, your forensic, and you're working together. Like, that's how we work. And that's going to save you the most time, effort, and money. But you have to know that this is not complicated math. These are not complicated spreadsheets. This is very simple, just listing out. You could list it out in a Word document, just listing out all of these things that look very suspicious and making them not want you to go much further, not want you to hire somebody to trace all of it. But they come to the table and they do best case, they split everything, right? There's no more game playing. There's no more hiding the ball. And then before you really sign on any agreement, you have them actually have to give you the statements to prove out what they're saying or explaining in the mediation, or do a deposition, which is, I think, sometimes worth it, because then you get them to commit to the lie and you can use that against them in the future. But all of these tactics are going to be things that you can actually do, or you can work together with us and book a strategy session. And then we can kind of fill out the full strategy, but you do some of the legwork. Use the holidays or use any of your downtime to do some of this work. And it will save you exponentially in the future. But it's not as difficult as they make it seem. Just walk through the steps, download our guide, and it will give you all of, maybe there's some samples so you can see, how we trace when we have lots of accounts. We actually layer them all together at the same month so that you're seeing where something pops over to the other account, pops over to the other account. So, we have some simple strategies and some simple spreadsheets that we'll show you in other trainings as well. So you can do it. We'll give you the tools to help.
I agree. I love it. Well, thank you, Melissa. We'll see you in part 2.